All right, another Q&A. Let's get into it. First question comes from IG user Hoffer.Henry2007. What do the Warriors need to do to get back into contention? Invent a time machine, go back and actually hit on the James Wiseman pick. That was probably like the biggest turning point. That was something that really could have set them up to continue winning, but then also set them up for the post-Steph Curry Big Three era. And the fact that they didn't just like whiff on it, like they just like absolutely missed. Like it's one thing to not get an all-star caliber player with the top pick, but to not even get a rotation piece, like that was just really that was bad. That was really bad. But in all seriousness, what can the Warriors do to get back into contention? Well, here's the thing. The Warriors are sort of in an interesting spot because they're sort of stuck with this roster for better or worse. Like they don't necessarily have the financial flexibility to go out and make certain trades or like trades on the margins, whatever. The only thing that's really left for the Warriors to do to even try and get back into contention is they have to swing for the fences. They have to go all in. They have to, they have to go out and trade for a guy like Lauri Markkanen. They have to mortgage their future. They have to make that blockbuster all in, the young players, all the draft picks type of deal for a Lauri Markkanen or whether it's someone else who might become available. That's really the only route you have to even try to get back into contention. And that doesn't even guarantee anything because, again, the West is still so stacked. And just because you trade for Lauri Markkanen, there's still like a whole other roster that you need to worry about. Like that doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. But I assume you're saying like, hey, how can the Warriors like get better to maybe try and get back into that conversation? That's really it. That's like the only thing left there is to do. They don't have any money to spend in free agency. They're not just like one small piece away. Like they need to do something big. They need to do something drastic. And I'm not saying it would necessarily work. It wouldn't be guaranteed to work. But like it's just you never know with those moves. But at the same time, like what's the alternative? The alternative is what they have now. Where yes, they're going to be a solid team. They're going to have great stretches, but they're also going to have some bad stretches, and it's going to result in probably the same thing as it did last year, which is they're probably going to be in the play-in tournament. Whereas if you swing for a guy like Lauri Markkanen, you could argue like, hey, like at least we have like these two like awesome building blocks in Steph and Markkanen, and that's worth plenty, in a game of basketball where star power obviously is so important. Again, I don't know if that necessarily puts them automatically back into the upper echelon of contenders or even into like, the mid-level of contenders, but like that's really the only option left because they've squeezed as much out of this roster as they can. They put themselves into the corner with the contracts that they've given out, which I'm not saying like I blame them for doing. It's just like the reality of the situation is sometimes you run something so hard that like the wheels begin to fall off. And so the only thing left is to just sort of like do a Hail Mary, swing for the fences and hope it works out. And so I really hope the Warriors do that because I think Steph is still that good and he deserves to still, like he can still totally be the best player on a championship team. I have no doubt about that at all. And so you want to, if the Warriors aren't necessarily able to put a legitimate contender around him, you definitely just want to see them do as much as possible to maximize the prime years that Steph Curry still clearly has left. Second question from TikTok user it's_skinny_baby. I hate reading some of these names. Why do people hate Trae Young so much? Well, I'm a Knicks fan, so that kind of explains my hatred to him. No, I really don't hate Trae Young. I respected Trae Young so much. Like, you hit a game winner in your first playoff game at Madison Square Garden. Like, salute to you, man. That deserves so much respect. But for me, like, since then, it's just like, dude, what have you done lately? Like, you're hanging on to that so much. Like I think it was either like this past year or 2 years ago where he wore shoes in MSG that said like King of Broadway, and it's like, dude, you had the one series. Congrats, you beat us. Like, I'm not even gonna try and like talk excuses about like the Knicks roster and whatever. Like, you beat us 4-1, super convincing, awesome. And like since then, the Knicks have just gotten better and better. You have a worse. I'm pretty sure he has a losing record against the Knicks since that playoff series, and yet you're still just like harping on that one shot, that one game, which again was so impressive. But it's like, dude, that was 3 years ago now. I think he's like still talking about it. I think in like a podcast interview, it was either this year or this past year, like he's still talking about it. And granted, maybe it's because people keep asking him about it, but it's just like, what have you done lately? Like some play-in appearances, the first round sweep, like all that stuff. But as far as why everyone else hates Trae Young, hate is a strong word. I don't know if anyone like actually hates Trae Young. I think the confusion with Trae Young is that he puts up these great stats, and I think he keeps pointing to the stats to be like, hey, look at how great I am. Like, look at these stats, 30 and 10. And it's like, it's this tough balance of like, yes, okay, those stats are very impressive, and I don't want to take away from that. But like, you reach a certain point in your career where stats aren't enough. like, okay, are you winning games? And there's that whole conversation of, well, his stats don't necessarily contribute to winning, right? He gets his 30, he gets his 10, but like his teammates don't like playing with him, and the offense isn't always as good as you think it'd be, and all this stuff. And like, it's a tough question because how much of that is on Trae versus how much of it is on the team around him? Like I always say, like not every best player is a guy like LeBron who can literally just take the worst team and bring them to the conference finals, to the finals. Like most best players, just even no matter how talented they are, like a Devin Booker, like a De'Aaron Fox, like they still need pieces around him. And so maybe you can make the argument that Trae hasn't necessarily had the best pieces around him, but you could also argue that he has. Like he said, plenty of talented guys: Clint Capella, Bogdanovich, John Collins was super talented, I think underutilized. DeJounte Murray, that obviously didn't work out now. Like, so it's not like he's had like a barren roster. So I think it's just this like, I think it's this constant, not necessarily from him, but I think it's just this constant, like, whether it's from him or like his camp or just like the Trae Young fan base, where it's like, give Trae Young his respect, like look at his numbers, blah blah blah. But it's like, dude, he hasn't like won it, like since that conference finals appearance, he hasn't won anything, and he's been through a few coaches now, and like it just hasn't resulted in anything. So like it's cool, it's impressive, and it definitely gets our attention at first, but then it's like, okay, what are you going to do to keep our attention? Those numbers need to like start leading towards winning and success, and for whatever reason they haven't. I can't fully put like exactly pinpoint why it hasn't happened for him, but like it just hasn't. And it's just like at a certain point, okay, the numbers are great, but like what else are you doing? And the fact that there's still, you know, this like message coming out of like Trae Young's fan base or his camp where it's like, give me my respect, and it's like, earn it. So I think that's sort of the frustration, where it's like, the numbers are great, but it's like, when are you going to start winning? And like when is that going to start mattering to you enough for you to like stop caring so much about getting your points and getting your assists, and stop harping on that and having like your dad harp on that, versus like doing the things, maybe sacrificing some numbers to actually put your teammates in better positions just to succeed, and like, you know, rise the entire tide of all the boats and whatnot, and actually start winning games and competing in the Eastern Conference. Because literally since that 2021 conference finals appearance, they haven't even gotten out of this first round. It's been first round appearances, it's been play-ins, and so it's just like, okay, the stats are cool. A lot of other people are putting up stats who are actually winning, so I'm gonna go focus on that. So I think it's that, and I think it's the gap between like, hey, these stats are impressive, but like we still want to see winning. And I don't know if him and like his camp and his fan base gets that. And I think when they keep complaining about stuff like that, it just makes everyone like really not like him. And I think that's where a lot of that comes from. Last question comes from, I did not write down what platform it was. It might have been YouTube. I think it was YouTube. Ben_MCLWN325. What is the best playoff run by a player ever? So I think automatically, whatever playoff run you want to talk about, it has to end in a championship. I don't like, obviously 2018 LeBron was insane, but like I think if we're talking about runs, like it's got to end in a championship. You got to cap it off the right way. It doesn't mean a thing without the ring. And I think the answer everyone's thinking of is Dirk in 2011. I don't really know. Like, I think you could make an argument that like Hakeem in 94, where again, it's like a similar thing where he didn't have another all-star on his team, and he also beat, you know, awesome big men like Barkley and Malone and Ewing en route to like in the era of big men, Hakeem, you know, asserted himself as the best, beating Malone, Barkley, and then Patrick Ewing en route to the championship. So that was really impressive. But I think Dirk in 2011 was just like, it's just like it feels like the easy answer, but like that there's reasons for that. Like it's the, you know, again, the supporting cast was good. Everyone started in the role, but obviously no other secondary all-star on that team. Wasn't a super team by any means. And then you look at the teams that he beat en route to it. He beat a tough Portland team in round one where they had LaMarcus Aldridge, and Brandon Roy had that massive comeback game in game 4 where he led the 20-point comeback. So that team was solid. Like, and this is what's always funny, is like, as much crap as LeBron gets for losing to Dallas the way he did, and he should, I'm not saying that, it's like, you know who else lost to that Mavericks team? The 2-time defending champion Lakers and Kobe Bryant. Like Dallas swept the 2-time defending champion Lakers in round 2. That might be more impressive in a way than beating the big 3 Miami Heat. Probably not, actually, because like the big 3 were just like really feared, but like I think that just like gets swept under the rug so much. And I don't even necessarily mean it in like a, hey, this is why we should criticize Kobe. It's like, no, this is why we should praise Dirk. Like, he took down, like, again, not only beat the 2-time defending champion Lakers, swept them clean. Like, that was just so impressive. Then you beat Durant, Westbrook, and Harden. Obviously, they were much younger and inexperienced, but it was still very impressive. And then to go on and beat the big 3 Heat, where it was literally David versus Goliath. It was this super team versus the one-man show, and with a bunch of supporting cast. And like, I think what was also so special about that playoff run for Dirk was that like, again, Dirk was sort of, I think, in his early to mid 30s at that point, and like you just didn't feel like, you felt that his best chance at winning a title had passed him by. And so for him to like still like for him to go and get it done that year with that team against those opponents where you're literally beating like some of the best players ever, like Kobe. Obviously Durant was a bit younger then and hadn't necessarily played in a lot of big time playoff games, but then to beat LeBron, Wade, and Bosh and get revenge for 06 and to like, again, like I think a lot of people on Twitter have talked about this, like I don't know if there's a single championship that means more to a player than Dirk in 2011, because it just validated everything that he had been through throughout those years, where he loses the finals in 06, loses in the first round in 07 as the 1 seed, and just like all this loss, all this criticism, can he get it done? No, he can't, because he's European, all that stuff. And for him to finally get it done in this ultimate underdog story, where again, it wasn't like he, found himself on like a super team or he like rode someone else's coattails. Like, no, he led the way entirely, just hitting clutch shot after clutch shot in the biggest moments in every playoff series. Like literally against every one of those teams, against Portland, the Lakers, OKC, Miami. You can go back and Dirk's the one closing out so many of those games. For him to have that moment in the way that it came about was just so special to watch. And I don't really know if anyone else has like a valid argument to usurp him in that conversation of best playoff run by a player ever, when you consider just the team he had, which again was great in their roles, but nobody really expected him to win the championship. The teammates he had, the opponents he had to beat, mainly the 2-time defending champion Lakers and the big 3 Miami Heat. When you consider sort of the context of, hey, maybe Dirk has passed his way, like, is he going to be one of those guys who never wins it? All that stuff, like, you combine all of that, and I don't really know how anyone else can make a valid argument for anyone else besides Dirk to take that title of best playoff run by a player ever. So yeah, those are 3 questions for today. Leave your comments, or leave your own questions in the comments of this video, and maybe I'll get to them in the next one. And have a good weekend.